They laughed when she rolled onto the field. Not loud, not all of them. Just enough to sting. One snickered, another whispered, "Why is she even here?" Her wheelchair creaked over the gravel like it didn't belong. The rifle tossed in her direction didn't help. It landed with a thud, like a dare, not a welcome. She didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't rise. She just adjusted her gloves, checked the wind, and breathed. Then came the shot. And another, bullseye, bullseye, bull, damn, eye. The field went silent. Even the birds seemed to stop. The sergeant dropped his clipboard. Someone muttered, "No way." And just like that, the woman they mocked became the name they would never forget. But this story isn't about one shot. It's about everything that led to that trigger pull. The years no one saw. The pain no one cared to ask about. And the kind of strength you can't measure in muscle or metals. So before you judge her, before you judge anyone, listen. Because behind that wheelchair, behind those quiet eyes, was a warrior who never stopped aiming. But where do stories like hers begin? They see the shot. They never ask about the hand that pulled the trigger, or the hands that trembled years before. They hear the silence she left behind, but not the noise she had to survive. They see the record she broke, but not the bones that broke before it. So, to understand the moment that changed everything, we have to go back. Before the field, before the wheelchair, before she even knew what strength really was, back to a neighborhood with broken streetlights, back to a girl no one expected to make it past 12, back to the very beginning. Detroit. Winter, 1996, the furnace was broken again, 4th time that year. Mama wrapped another towel under the door to keep the cold out, and the rats in. In the one-bedroom apartment above the corner store, a girl named Alana pressed her hands against the window. Frost bit her palms. She liked that. It reminded her she was still alive. She was 7, already used to hearing no. No heat. No lights. No, your daddy ain't coming back. Her mother, Rosa, worked nights at the bus depot. Double shifts, sometimes triple. Came home smelling like gasoline and broken promises. But every night, before her bones gave out, Rosa would whisper, "You ain't weak, baby. You're just heavy with purpose." Alana didn't know what that meant. She just knew kids at school laughed at her cheap coat. Teachers looked past her raised hand. And the world? Well, the world felt like a test she never got to study for. On a Wednesday in March, Alana was riding in the back seat of her uncle's car. He'd had 2 beers, maybe 3. Didn't matter. What mattered was the red light, and how he didn't stop. The truck hit them broadside, metal folded like paper, Alana's legs pinned. She woke up to white ceilings and the hum of machines. Her mom was there, eyes red, hands shaking. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. Spinal injury, permanent, she won't walk again. Alana didn't cry. Not then. Not when the nurse brought the chair. Not even when the first kid at school called her crash dummy. She just stared ahead and whispered, "I'm still here." Middle school was war. Hallways weren't built for chairs. Neither were playgrounds, or lunch tables, or bathrooms without handrails. But the hardest part wasn't the ramps. It was the way people looked at her, like she had already lost. They saw the chair before the girl, heard her silence and mistook it for weakness. But inside? Inside she was made of steel. Bent, maybe. Never broken. Her grandfather, Henry, was a quiet man, a Korean war vet who never talked much about what he saw, but he knew pain, and he saw something in Alana. One day, he rolled her down to the basement, laid a cloth on the table, opened a wooden box. Inside, his old service rifle. Alana's eyes widened. "Want to learn?" he asked. She nodded. The barrel was heavier than she thought. Her arms shook. Her grip was awkward. But she learned. Trigger discipline, breath control, sight alignment. In silence, they practiced. Week after week, month after month. He never called her disabled, never slowed down, never went easy. "Don't let the world define your weight," he told her. "Make it part of your aim." By 15, Alana could shoot tighter groups than most adults. By 16, she was studying physics and ballistics in secret. By 17, she could hit a moving can from 100 yards without standing up. But no one at school knew. She didn't talk about it, didn't post, didn't brag. She was used to not being believed, so she let her work speak in private. That year, she entered an essay contest about invisible strength. She won second place. The first place winner had written about climbing Everest. Alana just smiled. She'd been climbing since birth. College recruiters didn't come to her neighborhood. ROTC programs didn't call. But one day, a letter arrived. It wasn't a scholarship, wasn't even a yes. It was a rejection from a military prep academy she had applied to in secret. Reason: physical limitation inconsistent with field duty. She read it twice, then burned it, slowly. Her mother found the ashes in the sink. Didn't ask, just hugged her, tighter than usual. But Alana had already made a decision. If the world wouldn't open a door, she'd build her own range and fire until they couldn't ignore the sound. She didn't wear rebellion on her sleeve. She didn't scream or protest or post. But Alana was, in every quiet way, a rebel. At 17, while her classmates were learning how to parallel park, she was studying drag coefficients. While others memorized history dates, she read declassified sniper manuals online. No one taught her how to dream like this. She built it herself, out of scraps of curiosity and stubborn rage. The city library wasn't wheelchair-friendly. She didn't care. She'd park herself near the physics aisle and get lost for hours. One librarian noticed. Ms. Ortega, mid-50s, sharp eyes, soft voice. "You know most kids your age read comic books?" Alana smirked. "I like velocity better than villains." From then on, Ms. Ortega saved books for her. Hidden gems about motion, balance, pressure, force. She never called her inspiring, never said, "Good for you." She just said, "I thought you'd like this one." And that mattered. One winter morning, Detroit was white and silent. No school, no traffic, no noise, perfect conditions. Alana wheeled out to an abandoned lot near her building. Wearing fingerless gloves, she set up cans on a fence post. Her breath fogged in the air like smoke signals. 10 meters, 20, 50, bang, bang, bang. Each can fell with a satisfying clink. She was smiling when a neighbor peeked out and yelled, "Girl, you trying to start a war?" She laughed, first time in weeks. Her high school had no adaptive sports, no veteran mentors, no encouragement. During career day, when she mentioned engineering or the military, a guidance counselor said, "Have you thought about social work instead?" Alana didn't reply, just wheeled away, and under her breath, "I've thought about changing the world." She didn't want to be seen as strong despite. She wanted to be strong because. Her room looked like a soldier's dream, met a physicist's obsession. bullet trajectory charts, wind speed tables, sticky notes with hand-drawn scopes. She couldn't go to the field, so she made the field come to her, in data. Her fingers flew across a second-hand laptop. She tracked real-time sniper tournaments online, guessing each shot before it happened. She didn't need legs to walk the path. She just needed angles and will. By 18, she knew more about ballistics than some officers, but knowing wasn't enough. She applied again, this time to a special civilian military integration program, not to fight, to analyze, to train. Her application was spotless. Test scores, perfect. Recommendation, Ms. Ortega wrote it by hand. Weeks passed, then months, nothing, until one envelope arrived, handwritten, no seal, no return address. Inside, a single sentence, "Come show us what you know," and a bus ticket. She didn't tell her mom everything, just enough. It's training, a chance. Rosa kissed her forehead like she was 6 again, packed an extra pair of socks, and whispered, "Don't let them unmake you." On the bus, Alana held the rifle case on her lap, wore noise-canceling headphones, listened to the rhythmic beat of gunfire simulations. No one spoke to her. No one noticed the scar near her neck, or the calm behind her eyes. But she was ready. For what? Even she didn't fully know. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was the first step into the unknown. The first thing they noticed wasn't her name, or her test scores, or the letter that brought her there. It was the chair. The creak of its wheels echoed louder than any shout. Some cadets glanced away. Some smirked, one even chuckled. She rolled past them like smoke through a field, unbothered. Until someone muttered, "She must be lost." She wasn't. She was exactly where she needed to be, even if they hadn't realized it yet. Because what came next wouldn't just change their perception of her. It would rewrite the definition of strength itself. The training ground smelled like dirt and disbelief, sweat mixed with sarcasm, grit layered with ego. Most of the recruits were younger than 25, tall, fit, loud. They moved like they owned the field, like nothing could break them. Then Alana arrived. No announcement, no drumroll, just the whisper of rubber wheels on concrete. The instructors looked her over once, clipboard, raised eyebrow, long pause. "You're the civilian analyst?" She nodded. "Yes, sir." They mumbled something about integration initiative, then moved on. The cadets weren't so subtle. "Where's her oxygen tank?" I didn't know this was a charity program. One guy mimed pushing a chair and said, "Boom! First place in NASCAR!" She heard it all, logged it, stored it. Not for revenge, but for timing. She wasn't given a rifle the first week, just observation duty. She watched, measured, took notes. When asked to report findings on shooting performance, she delivered an analysis so sharp the lead trainer asked, "Are you sure you're not ex-military?" She wasn't. But her mind had been in the field for years. They didn't like that. They called it luck, said she probably had help. One afternoon, the wind picked up. Dust in the air. Paper targets flapped like warning flags. Alana rolled to her usual spot. Notebook in hand. A recruit tossed a crushed soda can in her lap. "Analyze that." She looked up. Not angry, just patient. "Trajectory's weak. Throw like that in combat and you'll die thirsty." Laughter. Some of it nervous, some of it genuine. But one pair of eyes across the field didn't laugh. His name was Marcus. Former infantry. Dishonorably discharged. Or so the rumor said. But the scars on his forearms and the haunted look in his eyes told another story. He didn't talk much, didn't joke, just trained. One evening, as the sun dipped below the tower, he walked over. "You don't flinch," he said. "Most do." She nodded. "You don't either." That was the beginning. Not a friendship. Not yet. Just a mutual understanding. Pain recognizes pain. Midway through the program, they ran a night simulation. Urban terrain, limited visibility, random fire alerts. Alana was again told to observe only. She did. But when one of the recruits got disoriented and shot a friendly dummy 3 times, she called it out, loud. "Left corner. You're crossing your own team's fire arc." The sergeant paused, turned. "Who told you to speak?" Alana held her ground. "Better me now than a coffin later." The silence that followed lasted longer than any applause could have. The next day, the sergeant tossed her a training rifle. "Let's see what you've got, Einstein." It wasn't kindness. It was a test. A trap. They handed her an outdated scope. No stabilizers. Moving targets. Windy conditions. No excuses. She adjusted her grip. Calculated windage. Did the math. First shot, center mass. Second, right eye. Third, split a plastic bottle at 150 meters. The field was silent. Someone cursed. Marcus smiled, but Alana didn't glow. She just wrote one word in her notebook. Data confirmed. Things didn't change overnight. Some cadets still ignored her. Others resented her. But they stopped laughing. She wasn't one of them. But she wasn't beneath them either. And when instructors had ballistic questions, they asked her first. She spent nights modifying her chair. Added stabilizing shocks, a pivoting base, adjustable rests for long guns. Not because she needed it, because she planned to need it. Her goal wasn't participation, it was precision. Marcus caught her one night, working with tools in the dark. "You training for a war?" She looked up. "No, I'm training to stop one." He didn't laugh, just nodded. End of month 3, the sergeant made it official. "There will be a live fire evaluation next week. Each of you will get 1 shot at the record." He turned toward Alana. "Yes, you too." Her name on the list. Finally. Some rolled their eyes. Others rolled their sleeves. But she rolled her wheels forward. They didn't expect her to show up, let alone early, let alone ready. She rolled out before sunrise, rifle across her lap, jacket zipped tight against the wind. Cadets laughed, called it her farewell tour, said she just wanted to feel included. One tossed a bullet her way. "Try not to drop it, Wheels." She caught it midair, held it up to the light, and whispered, "Don't worry, I won't miss." No one knew how true those words would be. Not yet. The field was quiet, except for the snickering. Someone had brought popcorn. Someone else had a phone half hidden in their jacket, recording. No one expected a miracle. They expected a meme. Alana sat still at the end of the shooting line, hands folded over her lap. She didn't look nervous. She looked rehearsed, because she was. Each recruit was allowed 3 shots, 2 for range finding, 1 for the official record. Targets were placed at increasing distances, 100 meters, 200 meters. Final target, 300 meters, crosswind, rotating disc. Few had ever hit it. None from a stationary platform. She rolled up to the line. Her chair creaked on gravel. The laughter started again. "Yo, someone get her a booster seat." "Is there a wheelchair category?" Marcus stepped forward, said nothing, but stood behind her like a silent wall. She didn't acknowledge him. Didn't need to. The wind. It was moving left to right. 7 knots. Her hair lifted slightly, but her face didn't move. She adjusted the custom scope, input the windage, checked the level, settled into the cradle she'd built with her own hands. The instructor raised an eyebrow. "You sure you don't want assistance?" She didn't blink. "No, sir, but thank you." Click, breath, silence. The sound of the rifle cracked like a bone-breaking sky. 100 meters, dead center, a few claps, mostly sarcastic. That one was easy. She didn't look at them, didn't celebrate, just reloaded. 200 meters. Crosswind heavier now, dust kicking up from the edge of the field. She adjusted down 0.7 mils, held her breath 5 seconds longer, let it out slow. Click, bang, right below the center, still within the kill zone. No one laughed. Not anymore. The 300-meter disc spun in place. It was metallic, half-shadowed by the rising sun. Even the instructors looked nervous. One by one, cadets before her had missed. Wide left, low right. Some didn't even hit the structure. Alana didn't rush. She took her time. This wasn't about pride. It was about proof. Proof that everything she'd done, the years in shadows, the hours in pain, the silence, mattered. She narrowed her gaze. One breath in, one heartbeat, and bang. The disc stopped spinning. Direct hit. Silence. Not stunned silence. Reverent, like a room had just witnessed something holy. The sergeant dropped his clipboard. One of the instructors muttered, "Impossible." Someone else whispered, "Replay that." Alana rolled back without a word. Didn't look at the target. Didn't look at the crowd. Marcus was waiting. He handed her a bottle of water. "You done?" he asked. She shrugged. "I just needed the data." No applause, no immediate praise, just stunned stares. A few cadets stepped aside as she passed. One offered to carry her rifle case. She declined. But something deeper had shifted. She wasn't the girl in the chair anymore. She was the girl who hit the disc. And that title? That stayed. 2 days later, her name appeared in the unit bulletin. Top score, civilian slot, A. Freeman with an asterisk, below it. Achieved from stabilized mobile platform, record stands. They tried to footnote her, but no one remembered the asterisk. They remembered the shot. That evening, Alana received a message. Unknown number. Voice on the other end. "We'd like to speak with you about training others." She didn't ask who "we" was. Didn't need to. The voice continued. "You did something no one expected. We think that's exactly what this country needs." Alana smiled. For once. Just a little. "I'm listening." That shot may have silenced a field, but it didn't erase the years that came before it. Respect isn't given after a single hit. It's built in the quiet, in the nights when no one claps, in the spaces where no one looks. Before Alana earned that moment, she fought dozens the world never saw. The ones that didn't end in applause but in exhaustion. And if you want to know how she kept going, you'll need to step back into the shadows she walked through right after they stopped laughing, and before they started listening. The applause never came. Not right away. After the shot that changed everything, most people didn't know what to say. The field had gone silent, but silence wasn't the same as acceptance. Some were still processing what they'd seen. Some refused to believe it, and some were already looking for ways to explain it away. The wind slowed down. The target was lucky. Maybe the sight was off. Alana didn't wait for them to decide how to feel. She rolled away from the field that day with the same quiet focus she'd arrived with, like the shot hadn't meant anything at all. But it had. It had meant everything. She returned to her room and disassembled her rifle bolt by bolt, cloth wiping every surface clean. It wasn't a ritual. It was discipline. That was something her grandfather taught her. Never celebrate what you're supposed to be capable of. Just prove it. Clean your weapon. Clean your mind. Start again. That night, while most cadets drank in the mess hall or re-watched the video of her shot on their phones in awe or disbelief, Alana stared at the ceiling. Her body ached. Her hands were blistered. Her shoulders burned from hours of recoil stress absorbed without support. But all of it felt right. Respect didn't come overnight. In the days that followed, some cadets nodded at her in passing. Small, awkward gestures, as if testing the waters of acknowledgement. Others still avoided eye contact. One even said to her face, "It's not like you're going to be on the front lines anyway," before quickly walking away. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew the type. The kind who only respected strength when it looked like theirs. The instructors were different. They asked questions now. Real ones. About barrel drift, environmental calculations, even equipment modifications. One asked if she had ever considered designing adaptive weapon rigs. Another pulled her aside and offered to write her a letter of recommendation to a civilian military engineering corps. She said she'd think about it, but what mattered more to her than recognition was what happened late one night, when the lights were low and the world was quiet. Marcus found her in the empty range shed, modifying the base of her chair with a torque wrench. He didn't ask what she was doing. Instead, he sat across from her, placed his combat knife on the table and said, "You know what they said about me when I came here?" She shook her head. "They said I was damaged, broken, a ghost with muscles." He paused, "And I believed them, until I saw you." The wrench slipped in her hand slightly. She tightened it again without looking up. "People like us," he continued, "we don't make sense to them. But that doesn't mean we don't matter. And that shot you took, that wasn't just yours. It was ours." That was the first time she let herself breathe in the impact of what she had done. Not just the precision, not just the record, but the message it sent to people like Marcus, to anyone who had ever been pushed aside. From that moment on, everything she did was intentional. When new cadets arrived 2 weeks later, Alana was the one who showed them the field layout. She wasn't assigned to do it, she just did. No one stopped her. No one questioned it. And when one of the younger recruits, a girl fresh out of high school, looked at her with hesitation, Alana gave her a map, a compass, and a single sentence. "Trust the wind and trust yourself." Word spread. She wasn't just the girl in the chair anymore. She was the sniper who didn't miss, the analyst who made the instructors rethink ballistics, the quiet force behind better results. One morning, she was invited to sit in on the strategy planning meeting with field commanders. They wanted her input on sightlines and cover angles, not as a token, as an expert. She spoke softly, briefly, but every word landed. After the meeting, one of the commanders approached her. "You ever consider staying on to teach?" he asked. Alana tilted her head. "You mean like a staff position?" He nodded. "We need more minds like yours." She didn't answer right away. Teaching was never the goal. Accuracy was. Impact was. Silence that shook people awake. That was her mission. But maybe this was another kind of shot. That night, she called her mother. They hadn't spoken in weeks. Training had kept her off the grid. When Rosa picked up, her voice cracked with joy and fatigue. "You okay, baby?" Alana smiled softly into the phone. "Yeah, Mama. I hit it. Honey, I don't know what that means, but I'm proud." "I know," Alana whispered. "That's why I called." They didn't say much else. They didn't need to. Some victories don't need parades. Some revolutions happen one bullet, one mind, one girl in a chair at a time. And when she closed her eyes that night, it wasn't the shot she heard replaying in her head. It was her mother's voice. And for the first time in years, she slept like someone who didn't have to fight to be seen. The record was real. The silence was earned. But there was one more thing they hadn't expected: an invitation. Alana was called to compete in the annual Inter-Unit Marksmanship Challenge, the same one she was once told she'd never even watch from the sidelines. It would be her first time firing in front of a full brass panel. Cameras, commanders, media. Some wanted her there to prove inclusion. She wanted to be there to prove precision. The night before the event, she sat alone in the open lot under a floodlight, chair parked, rifle on her lap. She wasn't nervous. She was calculating wind direction, again. Because tomorrow, she wouldn't just hit a target. She would erase 1,000 doubts with one impossible shot. The morning air was thin, crisp, sharp enough to taste. Flags flapped against the pole at half-staff. Not for mourning, for tradition. This was the day every unit sent their best. Marksmen, instructors, combat veterans, snipers who could split a playing card from a rooftop 2 blocks away. And then there was Alana. She arrived early, not for nerves, for focus. Her chair rolled across the dew-covered concrete, leaving a set of twin tracks behind her, clean and direct. She wore black gloves, a light jacket, and a look that didn't waver, even when the others turned to stare. Some had heard the rumors. A girl, in a chair, broke a record. They looked at her now like the story had just stood up and wheeled past them. Nobody spoke to her at first. They spoke about her. She's the token. This is political. Let her shoot. It'll be over quick. Alana didn't flinch. She wasn't here for their comfort. She was here for the shot. She checked her rig, calibrated her scope, adjusted the counterweights. Every part of the setup was hers, modified, optimized, tested 100 times under worse conditions than this. She didn't have legs to steady her stance, but her center of gravity was tuned like a heartbeat. A voice called out through the loudspeaker. "All shooters report to the ready line." She rolled forward. 10 other competitors stood tall beside their gear, mostly men. One woman, older, with a long braid and sharp eyes. Each had a patch on their uniform marking years of service, deployments, tours in places Alana had only read about. But none of them carried what she carried. She carried disbelief and the obligation to crush it. The shooting order was randomized. She was third. While the first 2 took their positions and fired clean, technical rounds, Alana sat still, watching the wind, tracking the sun's position, listening to the rhythm of each breath she took. When her name was called, the field fell quiet. She wheeled forward. Someone in the crowd coughed, a nervous twitch of sound. Alana locked her base, folded out her stabilizers, and unfolded the rifle she had named after her mother. Rosa. She set her elbows, checked the reticle. 3 targets, 3 distances, 1 shot each. No warm-up, no second chances. She exhaled once, slow and full. The wind shifted north. She adjusted 1.3 clicks. She aimed and fired. The first target shattered clean, center impact. No reaction. She reloaded with ease. Second target, farther, slightly elevated. The barrel tilted, steady. Another breath, another shot. Impact. Left center. Still within the kill zone. A few murmurs now. a nod from one of the range officers. She didn't hear them. The final target was set behind partial cover, a steel plate the size of a dinner tray. Wind cut across the field again, unpredictable this time. A cross gust, slight uptick in speed. She waited. Her finger hovered over the trigger. She adjusted her posture subtly. A deep breath, the kind that empties everything. Then silence. Bang. The plate didn't just ring, it spun. Once, twice, then stopped. Dead center. A full 3-second pause followed. Then the audience erupted, but Alana wasn't listening. She was already breaking down her rifle, resetting the chair, cleaning the optic, just like she always did. Because to her, this was never about attention. It was about accuracy. A judge stepped forward, hand outstretched, wanting to speak to her on camera. She shook his hand, but declined the interview. Let the numbers talk. Let the bullet speak. Later that day, she sat alone on the edge of the range, watching clouds gather over the far hills. The sun was behind her. Her score, top of the board, was behind her too, printed and posted, underlined in red. Marcus showed up quietly. "You made some enemies today," he said. Alana looked at him sideways. Only the ones that needed to lose. He sat beside her in the grass. "You're not going to let this be your peak, right?" She smiled, for once, wide. "No," she said. "It's just the first echo." He pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a letter, official, sealed. "It's from D.C., they want to talk." She didn't take it right away. "They always wait until after you prove something," she said. "Never before." He nodded. "That's the world." She took the letter, slipped it into her jacket, and stood. Tomorrow she'd decide. Today she had one more thing to do. She wheeled over to a group of younger recruits gathered near the bleachers, fresh from orientation. One of them looked wide-eyed. A girl, barely 18, unsure how to carry her gear. Alana handed her a small, folded piece of paper, the same notes she used to calculate wind drift and angle compensation. The girl looked at it, stunned. "I don't know if I can even try," she said. Alana bent slightly forward. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to aim." The girl nodded. Alana turned away. Behind her, the crowd was still talking, but she wasn't listening. She was already focused on her next shot. Because the thing about silence is, once it's broken with purpose, it never truly stops echoing. The range was behind her. So was the applause, the score, the disbelief turned to silence. But Alana didn't take victory with her. She took the chair, the rifle, the routine, and something heavier than all of it. Responsibility. A week passed, then 2. She returned home to Detroit, to the apartment that still creaked under winter wind, to the cracked sidewalk where she'd first learned how to roll uphill. Her mother met her at the door with tears and fried chicken, the universal language of black moms who don't know what to say, but need to feed you anyway. "I saw you," Rosa whispered, holding her close. "Not just what you did, who you've become." Alana didn't cry. She didn't know how to anymore. Her strength had carved itself into silence so long ago. It was hard to find the softness again. But she let herself be held, if only for a moment. The next morning, she rolled past the old library. It was still there. So was Ms. Ortega, now grayer, thinner, but sharp as ever. "You came back," the librarian said, smiling. "I owed you," Alana replied. They didn't talk about the record. They talked about books, about balance, about how wind isn't an enemy, just something you learn to read. By the time she left, She had 3 new biographies tucked into her lap. All women, all warriors in their own way. That night, she couldn't sleep. She pulled out the letter from D.C. They wanted her in a federal advisory role, adaptive weapons systems, sniper training, R&D. It was everything she had once dreamed of being allowed to do. But something inside her paused. She had become something without their permission. And now they wanted her insight, only after she'd proved it on their stage. She wasn't angry, just aware. Alana closed the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and left it on the kitchen table. Instead, she wrote her own, to a youth outreach center on the East Side, the one where she used to pretend to be a guidance counselor just so she could sit in air conditioning. She offered to teach, not weapons, focus, form, freedom through discipline. She showed up that Friday with no press, no flyers, just herself, her chair, and a range chart printed in grayscale on cheap paper. The kids didn't laugh. They didn't cheer either. They watched. One of them, a boy maybe 10, maybe 12, walked up after everyone else had left. "You really hit the shot?" he asked. Alana looked him in the eye. "I've hit a lot of things people said I couldn't." The boy nodded like that made perfect sense, then asked, "Can you show me how to see wind?" She smiled, and they began. Word spread slowly, then fast. She wasn't famous. She was consistent. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she showed up at the center, brought charts, diagrams, sometimes old footage from competitions. Not once did she mention her record. What mattered wasn't what she had done. It was what they now believed they could. One evening, a local news reporter came by, camera in hand, asking for an interview. She declined. The reporter looked confused. "You could inspire so many." "I'm not the story," Alana said. "They are." When the reporter left, the kids asked why she turned him down. She answered simply, "When you're really aiming, you don't wave your arms. You steady your breath." That became their motto. Breathe first, then aim. And just like that, a small program with no budget became a magnet for kids who'd been told their whole lives that they were too poor, too broken, too invisible to matter. Alana never tried to fix them. She just gave them the same thing her grandfather had given her: time, tools, and trust. Years passed. Some of those kids would go on to join the military. Some wouldn't. Some would become engineers. Some would just survive, which for many was more than enough. But all of them, every single one, would remember the girl in the chair who never asked to be clapped for. She just asked for the shot, and she never missed. There's a kind of silence that isn't quiet at all. It hums beneath everyday noise. It moves through people like wind through trees, invisible, but undeniable. And in that silence, some names are carried for years. Alana Freeman became one of them. Not because she chased it, but because she never needed it. Years after the shot, her name still circled quietly in certain corners of military training circles. Her record still stood untouched. New recruits whispered about her the way kids tell legends around a fire. They didn't talk about her chair anymore. They talked about the way she made the wind work for her, the way her finger never hesitated, the way she looked through a scope like it told her secrets no one else could hear. But she wasn't at the competitions anymore. She wasn't on the news. She was exactly where she wanted to be, at the community center, at the range behind the school, on broken sidewalks, in the lives of kids who had been written off. Sometimes she watched them fire their first shot and flinch. She never scolded them. She just waited. And when they looked up, embarrassed, She'd smile and say, "First shots aren't meant to be perfect. They're meant to be honest." That's what she had learned. Honesty isn't clean. It doesn't get a parade, but it hits harder than anything else when you aim with it. One summer, a girl named Tasha, 15, fast-talking, sharp-minded, asked her, "Why'd you stop competing?" Alana was silent for a moment. Then, "I didn't stop competing. I just changed what I was aiming at." Tasha frowned. "But you could have gone farther." Alana looked her in the eye. "So can you." In that moment, the girl didn't nod. She stared, processing, receiving. That was enough. The world still spun, politics still failed, wars still came and went. But every week, without fail, Alana showed up. Sometimes with a new scope to test. Sometimes just with her voice. There were days her hands hurt too much to hold a pen. Days when her chair wouldn't respond. Days when the ghosts came back loud. But she came anyway. Because someone always showed up hoping today was the day they got seen. And Alana knew what that felt like. She knew what it meant when the world doesn't know where to place you. When every doorway seems too narrow. When every glance says, "You don't belong here." She also knew what it meant to fire anyway. So she taught them that. How to aim when no one's watching. How to breathe when the world's laughing. How to fire a shot that says, "I'm here, I matter, and I'm not going anywhere." One evening, she received a letter from the very unit that once doubted her. They wanted to name the annual Precision Challenge after her. Alana stared at the envelope for a long time, then folded it. Not out of anger, not out of pride, out of peace. She never needed her name etched in stone. It was already etched in people. That same week, an old instructor from her first camp showed up at the youth center, now with a gray beard and slower steps. He watched quietly from the corner as Alana guided 3 kids through a breath-and-hold drill. Afterward, he approached. "I've seen a lot of shooters," he said. "None like you." She didn't answer. He added, "They don't forget you." Alana looked back at the kids packing up their gear, laughing at nothing, alive in a world that once tried to silence them. "I don't need them to," she said. The man extended his hand. She shook it, then turned back to the kids. She never gave long speeches, never needed to raise her voice. But every now and then, someone new would ask, "Miss Freeman, what was your secret?" She always gave the same answer. No secret, just silence, and the choice to aim instead of explain. And when they asked how she learned to shoot like that, she'd smile and say, "I learned to breathe first. Then I learned to stop apologizing." They laughed at her chair. They questioned her place. They called her a long shot. But she didn't raise her voice. She raised the bar. And in a world obsessed with volume, she proved that sometimes the most powerful sound is a bullet breaking a bias. This wasn't a story about victory. It was a story about vision, about what happens when someone refuses to let the world define them by what's missing, and instead shows up with what can't be measured. Precision, purpose, presence. Alana Freeman never asked to be remembered. She just asked for the shot. And when she took it, she didn't just hit the target. She shattered everything that told her she couldn't. So if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, dismissed, remember this. You don't need to be loud to be legendary. You don't need permission to aim, and you sure as hell don't need legs to stand your ground. Now it's your turn. If this story moved you, type one word in the comments. Steady. Just that. No hashtags, no speeches, because those who carry quiet strength don't need to shout. They just leave echoes. And if you believe stories like Alana's deserve to be heard, share this video with someone who's still aiming. Someone who needs to hear. You don't have to fit the mold to hit the mark. Breathe first, then aim, then remind the world what silence can really do.